Alrighty, guys. Well, we are finally here. It seems like just yesterday that I was in the theater to watch Captain America Brave New World, but we are approaching Thunderbolts. And look, Captain America Brave New World, not to make excuses for these films, because Thunderbolts could very well end up being terrible, and Fantastic Four First Steps could very well end up being terrible, and the MCU could continue to spiral down in quality. But I will say at the beginning of the year, I think a lot of us thought, well, Captain America Brave New World has the potential to be good, and I thought it was going to be good based on the trailers, and I still think it's okay. Like I've been saying, I think, on the fence of 50-50, I'm going to lean a little more positive, but still not my favorite MCU movie of all time. But I have high hopes for Thunderbolts, and I have high hopes for Fantastic Four First Steps. I think these two films, and if these two films are good, and then Avengers Doomsday is really good, then we have ourselves the launching pad to something really exciting going on into the MCU. So Thunderbolts is coming up. As we like to do with a lot of these big movies and shows, I wanted to take some time here to do a segment where I give some hopes that I have for Thunderbolts, and I give some predictions that I have for Thunderbolts. I have 3 each today, and I think that there's some fun ones here, I think. And I think, doing these kinds of segments, it just helps ground me in helping me think about what I think would make a successful movie or show based on my hopes, and then just some fun predictions to see if I'm right or wrong. As we do a review. I have my tickets for Thunderbolts for Thursday night, May 1st, and so we will definitely get the review out for episode 76 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Crazy number, by the way, crazy number. But we will definitely get out our review for next episode. And then episode 77 will likely be a lot of post-Thunderbolts analysis, post-credit scenes, and what it means for Avengers Doomsday, because we know most of these characters are going to show up in Avengers Doomsday and whatnot, and all that kind of stuff. So, anyways, let's get into it. So, like I said, hopes. 3 hopes here. 3 predictions, 3 hopes. Hopes, as I mentioned, these aren't things that will guarantee for me enjoyment for the movie, but I do think that if these 3 things hit, then more likely than not, I will have walked out of Thunderbolts very, very happy. So number 1 for Thunderbolts, my hope number 1, is that I want Thunderbolts to be something more than quote-unquote fun. Because I think Thunderbolts, from what I've seen, has a very high floor. The floor of Thunderbolts is something like an Ant-Man and the Wasp. Fun. Enjoyable. Right? Light is the wrong word, but the usual MCU quips and jokes and Ant-Man and the Wasp style, or what's another one that people, I don't know, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 maybe, or something like that, where it's fun. It's fine, and you enjoy it, and maybe you don't think about it too much after you leave the theater. And I think that that's the floor. And if that's the floor, great. I'm on board for something fun. But I do hope, and I am mildly optimistic about this, that Thunderbolts can dive into something a little more than just that. Whether it's emotion, thought-provoking discussions, or complex characters, more than just the usual MCU quips, maybe more than like an Age of Ultron, for example, which is a fun movie. But, you don't really think about Age of Ultron all too much after you see it for the first time or again, at least in my opinion. But I think based on the comments from Jake Schreier, who's the director of the movie, it seems like there was an intention to make these characters 3-dimensional, to make these characters complex, to truly try to understand their psyches. And it looks like Yelena is going through an actual depression. And I think other characters like John Walker, super, super complicated. The question becomes, how are they going to translate that from the TV show to the movie? For, I think, the vast majority of the audiences, they haven't seen the TV show, so we'll have to see how they summarize that. But Ghost has some villainous streaks in her, although we'll see if she's more reformed. Red Guardian is interesting. Bucky is obviously one of the most complicated characters in the MCU. So I'm hoping, and Sentry as well. Sentry, we'll see how he is handled. But I'm hoping for something more than just it was like the first reaction saying it was a fun MCU ride. I'm hoping that the first reviews say something like, this is actually substantially more thought-provoking or more interesting or whatever the case might be than your usual MCU film. That's what I'm hoping for. Again, I mean, it's not going to translate into acclaim necessarily. I think Eternals, right? A lot of the positive reviews for Eternals were, this is one of the most thought-provoking movies in the MCU. It's really interesting and philosophical, and I loved that. Not all the critics did. That's fine. But, for me, that's what I'm looking for. So that's hope number 1. Hope number 2 is that there are genuine surprises. I hesitate to say, based on the trailers, because there has been a lot of trailer footage so far, I hesitate to say that there aren't any surprises left, but you kind of feel like you get the general story structure so far. At the very least, it's something like, okay, so the characters are on their own. I mean, it's a kind of a team-up structure, right? But the characters are on their own, and then they all kind of band together, and then Bucky goes and gets them, and they go and fight Sentry in some kind of bunker, and then they go to Avengers Tower, and then they fight Sentry, right? It's kind of seeming like that's going to be the story structure. And also, it looks like Taskmaster is not going to make it out of the first 5 minutes of the movie or whatever. So, I mean, I don't know. And it looks like all the characters are going to survive into, all the rest of the characters are going to survive into Avengers Doomsday. That, to me, by the way, if you watch my video about the cast announcement for Avengers Doomsday, that itself doesn't bother me. I mean, I know a lot of people were like, they spoiled Thunderbolts. And I'm like, guys, no one was complaining when Spider-Man Far From Home released a trailer when Spider-Man was dead. Like, this was pre-Endgame's release, and Spider-Man Far From Home released a trailer. Like, let's calm down a little bit, right? It's not like the MCU is doing this for the first time. It's just part and parcel of having a cinematic universe where things are connected. That's fine. I'm just hoping that the story itself has some nice twists and turns that, make it a little unpredictable. Because for a film like this, right, I'm not saying you should kill off all the characters and then in Doomsday they're all variants or something like that. Like, oh, gotcha. Like, I don't want a gotcha moment just for the sake of a gotcha moment. But I do hope that there are things in here where you go, oh, wow, was not expecting that to happen. So that is my hope there. And hope number 3 is that this becomes a team to root for. I think it's fine and all to bank on the fact that, oh, let's put the Thunderbolts in Avengers Doomsday, and pretty prominently, it seems like, and let's hope that the audience connects with them. They played that gamble actually very successfully with Black Panther into Infinity War, because if you remember, Black Panther, the film, came out 2.5 months before Avengers Infinity War, but Wakanda was such a pivotal point, setting, location, people group, right? The Wakandans in Avengers Infinity War, because that was the setting of the final battle in Avengers Infinity War. And that's all, that was all a gamble, because what if Black Panther, right? It seems silly to say, but what if Black Panther was not successful? Then you go into Infinity War and all the scenes in Wakanda, everyone's like, yeah, but let's get back to Thor or whatever, right? So that was a gamble and it paid off. I think they're playing a similar gamble, maybe to a smaller extent, with the Thunderbolts, because all the Thunderbolts are in Avengers Doomsday. And what if the team just isn't super interesting? And then all of a sudden you're filming Avengers Doomsday and supposedly they have a script. I don't even know. And supposedly, they have the story worked out, and the Thunderbolts show up and it's supposed to be a big applause moment and all the audience is like, but why? Why do we care about these characters? So what I'm hoping for is that the Thunderbolts, heading into Avengers Doomsday, you're like, oh, but I'm really excited to see the Thunderbolts again. I'm really excited to see Yelena and Red Guardian and Ghost and Bucky, and I am missing and John Walker. So I that's what I'm hoping for, because to me that would go a long way. Because then it's like, okay, original X-Men, remaining Avengers, right? Sam Wilson and there weren't that many original Avengers left, I suppose, but original Avengers, Captain America and Falcon and Wakandans and Fantastic Four, which I'm also hoping the same thing. I'm hoping that they become a team that you root for. But it seems like for them, it's a little easier because it's the first family and whatnot. And they seem, the cast is really good. Not that the cast for Thunderbolts isn't good. It's great. I'm just, you know what I mean. But then just to add on the Thunderbolts and be like, yes, the Thunderbolts are going to be a part of that. I think that would be a huge cherry on top. So really hoping for that. And then let's get on to my 3 predictions here. These aren't things that I'm necessarily hoping for. These are things that I'm just thinking are more likely than not to happen. And yes, I could predict very obvious things like, oh, Sentry turns into his final form and threatens to kill the Thunderbolts, but then they survive and somehow defeat it, stuff like that. But I think that that's not as fun. So these 3 predictions are a little more out there. And I always do predictions that are a little more out there just because it's fun. And I'm not betting on anything. So it's just all for fun. So number 1, the prediction. The answer, to the asterisk mystery is either silly, obvious, or both. I think Kevin Feige maybe thought at first he was doing something fun and clever. And I'm not saying this is a huge mistake or anything. It's just a marketing ploy at the end of the day. The movie does not change whether or not, at least in my opinion, from my vantage point without having seen the movie, it doesn't look like the movie changes with or without that asterisk. Maybe it becomes a plot point later on in the movie, but in everything in the trailer, they don't even reference the asterisk. It's just been in the marketing. So, to me, I think Kevin Feige kind of thought this is going to be a fun, clever thing. At this point, it's almost become a little bit annoying, right? Because, they keep using that imagery of the asterisk with all 6 members, and it's even sometimes 5, because Taskmaster, I guess, doesn't exist in this movie. But, the 6 prongs of the asterisk, and they're like, oh, what could this be? And they just don't even hint at what it is. And my thought is that I'm just, unless it's something so far out there and something that only you can realize once you see the movie, I don't understand what this could possibly be other than some kind of joke or a name change, which, yeah, like that's obvious. Dark Avengers or whatever you're going to be, fine. Or, I don't know, a reference to Sentry, like the star of Sentry. I don't know. And so I think that it's going to be a lot more obvious than we think it is. Like, I don't think that the asterisk is going to be like, oh, it was this big secret. See, we told you, we couldn't tell you. It's like, no, you could have hinted at it or something. Or you just could have not done that at all, and it would have been the exact same. I don't think the asterisk is doing anything for the movie, honestly. I could be wrong. I would love to be wrong. I would love to walk into Thunderbolts and be like, wow, that was so clever. That was the most, the smartest thing the MCU has ever done. I would love to be like that. I don't think I will be. So that's prediction number 1. Prediction number 2. So let's get the obvious out of the way. Yes, Taskmaster dies in the first, I'll say 20 minutes of the movie. Fine. That's obvious. But her death is pivotal to the entire story. Not just pivotal to one scene where they're like, oh no, Taskmaster died and we have to go after Sentry now. And then they forget about her for the rest of the movie. This is a little bit out there. And it has really nothing to do with anything like that we've seen in the trailers or anything like that. Because frankly, we haven't seen Taskmaster in any of the movie besides the, I think the bunker fight, right? Where Sentry first shows up. So I'm sure that's where she dies. And if she's in the movie for more than 20 minutes, I'm going to be shocked. I'm going to be absolutely shocked. But I do think, though, that you don't just include Taskmaster just for the sake of it, just for fun, because you could have included a whole bunch of other characters for fun. Abomination could have been in there, because Sentry versus Abomination is still kind of lopsided towards Sentry. Or you could have included Zemo as a mastermind, or you could have included Red Hulk in there even, break him out of prison. So you could have included a lot of characters in Thunderbolts just for fun. Taskmaster is really interesting, because you didn't need that character at all. And so my suspicion is that the reason for her being in the story is very specific. And I'm very curious to know what that is, but I have a feeling that whatever it is and whatever her death ends up being, sorry, Taskmaster, maybe you're in the whole movie and maybe they're just... Again, if she's in the whole movie, then it also means her role is very pivotal because they're not showing her in the trailer, so it means that she's doing something really important. So I think that her death, because I do think she's going to die very early, but I do think her death is going to be very important to the entire story. That's my prediction. And number 3... this is perhaps the boldest one, because I think that if I made this prediction for Fantastic Four First Steps, everyone would be like, duh, obviously. So I'm going to make it here for Thunderbolts and not for Fantastic Four First Steps. I think Robert Downey Jr. cameos as Dr. Doom in the post-credit scene. I think it's about time. I think that you can say, okay, Captain America Brave New World, he really didn't have much to do with anything there, whatever, fine. I think the Thunderbolts having a very direct line of sight into Avengers Doomsday, and I think also just proximity, right? Because sometimes these post-credit scenes have nothing to do with anything that goes on in the movie. I mean, very loosely, maybe. Like, for example, Avengers Age of Ultron had a tiny subplot with Infinity Stones. And what was the end credit scene? It was Thanos being like, I'll do it myself. Nothing to do with anything, really. Avengers, right? I mean, sure, Thanos shows up and he was the one controlling Loki or giving Loki power. But I mean, it wasn't like Thanos showed up in the movie, right? But you were building towards that. Thor Ragnarok was a little different because Thor Ragnarok had a very... it was basically the prologue to Avengers Infinity War, the very end of Thor Ragnarok, right? So that made sense. But that movie also came out 2 movies before Avengers Infinity War, and it teased Thanos. It teased Thanos' attack on the Asgardian ship. And so in a similar way, I think, and this is just a thought and a prediction, that Robert Downey Jr.'s character is going to be teased a couple movies before Avengers Doomsday. I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know when, I don't know why. But I do think, and this is my prediction, that while he probably will show up in a Fantastic Four post-credit scene, maybe, but that's kind of an obvious prediction, I think he's also going to show up in a Thunderbolts post-credit scene as well. So guys, those are 3 hopes and 3 predictions I have for Thunderbolts. Again, it's just for fun. The predictions, just for fun. My hopes, I think if those 3 things happen, then I will be very, very happy and excited for what happens with Thunderbolts. Guys, what do you think about all these different things? Let me know in the comments. And are you excited about Thunderbolts, or are you still a little bit nervous? Maybe you're still kind of thinking the MCU is on a downturn. So let me know what your thoughts are on Thunderbolts in the comments down below.